All right, greetings, good morning, and welcome to Mind the Moment. This, my friends, is our coffee house in the cloud, a place for us to build community, get centered, feel connected, and shine a light on some of the many wonderful mindfulness instructors that New England has to offer. It is Tuesday, May 19th, 2020. That means it's the 57th anniversary of the publication of Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from a Birmingham jail. While no single passage from that paragon of radical compassion in action can illuminate its whole essence, I did want to share these lines this morning. Quote, I am cognizant of the interrelatedness of all communities and states. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly, end quote. So as we continue weaving our way through these complicated, difficult times, I hope that we never lose sight of the fact that we're all in this together and that our kindnesses, as well as those moments in which we may fall short, do reverberate. So I'm John Roberts from Harvard Pilgrim Health Care's mindfulness program. We are deeming this the first episode of the second season of this public forum offering mindfulness instructions and discussion 2 times per week. As such, I'm so pleased to welcome back Zeenat Potia, a wonderful mindfulness instructor whose teaching aspires to create a more inclusive and sustainable world for all who live in it, and whose teaching certainly inspires me. Good morning to you, Zeenat.
Hi, John. Wonderful to be here and lovely to be with all of you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So in just a moment, I'll hand it over to Zeenat to lead us in a 10-minute guided meditation, after which I'll be asking her to offer her own thoughts and a few thoughts of my own. Then we'll turn it over to you at home to ask questions, and we'll wrap it all up just before 9 a.m. Now, you may have noticed at the bottom of your screen an option to open up a chat box. At any point, please do so. Use that chat box to type whatever questions or comments you might have. Zeenat, is there anything you'd like to ask the folks at home to comment on as we get started here?
Sure. I think a question today that would lead us into very nicely into some discussion and practice would be to reflect upon any activity or person or place where one feels joy, where one feels essentially well, really happy and resourced. So any examples of that would be a wonderful way to start.
Oh, thank you. All right. So while folks type, so I just want to make sure that people did know that, Zeenat and I will be the only ones who are able to see what you type. And if we don't read your question or comment on air, please note that we do read and appreciate them all. And before we close, I will point you towards some other ways to get in touch and provide feedback to us as well. Oh, wow. Okay. So I got a lot of great stuff coming in. Someone says, in the forest, or painting, the beach, walking, my backyard on a sunny day. Yeah, I can feel that. Visiting the ocean and the mountains in Maine, remote Fiji Island, walking outside and taking in the spring beauty, our trail that we maintain next to the river, running, playing with my son, Colorado mountains. Oh, wow. Okay. So that's a lot. That's a great range right there. Okay. Well, Zeenat, I hope that gives you a good foundation to get us started. Now let me turn it over to you to proceed.
Thank you, John. And thank you all for sharing. You really have, it just makes me very happy to hear the things where you feel a profound sense of well-being. And the examples that you've given are examples of what's known as resourcing in terms of developing and cultivating resilience. So it's something that I've been very captivated by in my own practice, especially now in the midst of the pandemic. So resilience is defined as the ability to bounce back from adversity or trauma. So I'd like to use, one of my teachers actually uses this image of moss, which is, how can you not love moss? It's lush and beautiful and green and just all around delightful. But as you know, when you step on it, it has the ability to spring back. And so in our mindfulness practice, one can consciously, with intention, develop resilience in order to meet the difficult, in order to move through our lives feeling more resourced. And so, typically, according to the research on this topic, the 3 areas where one can cultivate it are in nature, around animals, And I put my kids in that category, and because sometimes they act like beasts. And number 3 is in creativity, so art, music, painting, and then places, of course, places that we have a special relationship with. So just to be clear that developing resilience or cultivating resilience is not to avoid the difficult or to bypass discomfort, but actually it's to better equip ourselves to then meet the difficult. So sometimes people think that it's taking the easy way out, but it's actually not. So let's, on that note, transition to the practice. And so just coming into a comfortable upright posture, you're welcome to stand, welcome to sit or lie down, and then just allowing the shoulders to drape. Head and neck are very relaxed, and invited to close the eyes, but you're also welcome to have them open with a soft gaze. So connecting to the shape that you're in, and the inherent dignity that's here. And just landing in the body, landing with a felt sense in the mind and the heart, however they are right now. A simple but powerful resource for stability, for ground, is just the contact that's here of the feet on the ground, on the earth, connecting us to the here and now. Providing support. So just knowing body sitting, body standing, alive, experiencing the breath as it comes and it goes. And so in service of what Rick Hansen calls growing the good, and we all have a negativity bias. It's not anything wrong with that. It's just how we have evolved. We need to counter it with intentionally growing the good. So I invite you to use this time in that way, to bring to mind, to open to wherever you feel most profoundly well, most profoundly at ease, happy, joyful, content, and bringing that activity or imagining yourself in that place. It's a very gentle exploration. If you're not being called in that way, then just staying with a familiar anchor like breath awareness or sound awareness. But if you're intrigued, then just holding that sense of that growing the good. Noticing the impulse to get lost in thinking about it, or memories, or planning, and just staying very connected to the felt sense of whatever that is for you. And it may be different things at different times, so whatever it is right now, For me lately, it's been the warm presence of my 3-year-old, just being physically close to her, noticing her heart beating brings me a profound sense of well-being. And then you could continue in this way, or if you wish, you can just gently let that go. And practice in choiceless awareness, just bathing in a warm ocean of awareness. Things will come and go, and we just patiently observe, we notice, without getting caught or swept away. If a storm comes along, you get knocked off, and using an anchor to stabilize, like breath or sounds, or then just resting in awareness. And just checking in the last couple of minutes of practice remaining, the precious moments that we've chosen to gather in this way. So recommitting, reconnecting to sustained present moment awareness. And then beginning to transition out of the practice. So taking your time Very gently opening the eyes if the eyes were closed. As you return, feeling free to do a little bit of movement, whatever feels good to take care of your body. I like to also invite in just a few more deeper intentional breaths. And then remembering, tucking into a corner of your heart, the reminders of what is most nourishing to you, so that when you find yourself in a pickle or trouble or a wave of anxiety or dread or fear, which I know is very common these days for all of us, then you can have or know there's a place to go to in your mind's eye, or if possible, then engaging in that activity or being with that person, however you are called to. Thank you so much for your practice. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Zeenat. All right, so, at our last session, last Friday, Tara Healy and I were talking a little bit about this idea of the silent meditation retreat. I know you know that well. This is being that thing where a person goes to a retreat center and spends either a few hours or a few days or a few weeks or even a few months pretty much doing nothing other than meditating. Tara mentioned that the special significance of the meditation retreat has a lot to do with the specific ways in which it allows a person to sharpen their focus, and how that specific way of focusing really benefits from the lengthy duration of practice that a retreat affords a person. So I would like to get your own take on the significance of the retreat experience, Zena. But first I want to offer my own understanding of it to see if it rings true with you. So the first meditation retreat I sat was 5 days long, and the suggestion from the teachers was to keep our concentration focused on the breath. I admit that I found this advice to be a little bit puzzling. I thought, I've got 5 whole days here. If all I do for 5 whole days is concentrate on my breath, then yes, maybe it's the case that I'm going to get really good at concentrating on my breath. But how much is that really going to help me out in the real world? What only occurred to me over the course of that first retreat was that the act of narrowing the lens of experience is actually a way of widening the lens of awareness. I was reminded of when I used to live in South Boston, and I would wait for the MBTA bus to pick me up at the corner of East 4th and East Broadway. And it always seemed like it took forever for the bus to arrive. This was in the days before some of the bus shelters had digital signs that told you exactly how much suffering you were in for, and before I had enough data on my cell phone to properly distract myself from anything and everything and everyone around me. And so I would sit in the bus shelter and stare at the same piece of the world in front of me, thinking I was wasting my entire life waiting for buses. A lot of emotions would roll through: boredom, frustration, agitation, despondency. But then at some point, I would stop resisting the experience. It's not like I had some sort of great epiphany. It's more like I would just forget to resist my predicament for a moment. And in that moment of forgetting to resist, I would suddenly start to notice things which I hadn't noticed before. I noticed that some of the houses in the neighborhood had pretty interesting facades. I noticed a gray squirrel dragging an entire cheeseburger across an unmowed lawn. I watched a bunny eat a blade of grass, which I found oddly comforting. I could smell the fresh, salty sea air layered atop the smoke from the old gold filter cigarette the man sitting next to me was smoking. I noticed the man. This was my neighbor. Maybe I even talked to him. We probably didn't have a lot in common, but at that moment, we were waiting for the same bus. And so if the bus had arrived at the exact moment I was approaching the shelter, I probably wouldn't have noticed any of these things. I probably would have continued pretending my neighbors did not exist, and if they did, that there could be no common ground between us. And I didn't need to start meditating to occasionally find myself in situations in which I would forget to resist a boring, frustrating, or agitating experience, and instead allow myself to explore that experience, to notice what was going on around me. But after sitting that first 5-day meditation retreat, I realized that after spending 5 days noticing your breath, you don't just get really good at noticing your breath. You get really good at noticing everything, including noticing why noticing might be a good thing in the first place. Back in the real world, you may find yourself forgetting to resist and remembering to notice, explore, and connect much more often. Or as the old meditator saying goes, insights may be accidental, but meditators seem to be more accident prone. So Zena, I'm curious as to your own thoughts on the value of the meditation retreat. What has the retreat experience meant to you in your own life and in your own experiences with it?
Thank you, John. And I just feel like I took a little trip to South Boston, waiting for the bus. That was a very moving description of your experience. I really loved what you said about narrowing the focus in a retreat experience to widen one's awareness. And that has certainly been the case for me. I have found retreats, I've been going on them now for over a decade, to be profoundly meaningful in my life in terms of deepening the practice, just having a container where that's all you're doing, for 10, 12 hours a day, where all your needs in terms of meals are taken care of, the housing is very basic and pared down, and you're with people practicing in community. So you're with others, but you're not obligated and actually not allowed, in a sense, to communicate with others. So there's no choice but to turn inward and to communicate, in a sense, with yourself and your own experience. And I think one of the things that I most love, and there's so many things, but I'll just mention one right now, is the utter and complete heightening of the sense doors that happens when you're practicing for hours on end, for days at a time. And then you begin, as you were saying, notice a lot more. And then when you leave the container, even after you've left the container of the retreat, you're carrying that cultivation of present moment awareness into the rest of your life. So when you come out of retreat, I notice when I come back into my daily life, I see more, I feel more, I hear more, I taste more. I smell more. It's incredible. So it just feels like you've taken a substance that's window washed all your senses, but you haven't. You've actually done the work of cultivating awareness. So.
That's wonderful. And I really would love to have folks type in any questions that they have for Zeenat. But while that's happening, so you're well aware that the ability to sit retreats like we used to has vanished over the past couple months. And as a mother of school-age children, or younger even, I can imagine that the ability to find the time and space to create a retreat-like environment is probably quite challenging for you. I'm wondering if you are finding ways to deal with that.
Yeah, it's very tricky, very challenging. I had lofty goals of practicing an hour in the morning, an hour at night, before my kids wake and after they go to bed. But unfortunately, that's been tricky, simply because I'm working from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. almost every day. So I'm trying to do the retreats if I can get outside for a solo walk, practicing walking meditation, and really trying to build that in as a way of getting some fresh air, getting some quiet time. Of course, one needs to wear a mask, so it's not quite as enjoyable, but not having any music or distractions, but just being with the walking has been really helpful. I wanted to address, there was a question about, I mentioned practicing the good. Yeah, that was growing the good. And the teacher who does a lot of work on resilience is Rick Hanson, Rickhanson. And I highly, highly recommend him and his work. And he has a new book out that's very compelling. And there's another question about how to stop distractions, tip to stop the distractions while meditating. So I would say to just to reframe that and to see the distractions as, to turn them into objects of meditation, to see them as part of the practice, not something that's taking you away from. So even, let's say you decide to practice for 20 minutes and for 18 of those, your mind has wandered, but then you've remembered and you've come back to the present moment, come back to your anchor, then you've practiced the entire time. It's not like you've been distracted. The very act of coming back is strengthening that mindfulness muscle in your brain, literally. And that's what the research tells us as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I can see maybe you're seeing this this comment that came in. Somebody says, silent retreats sound so difficult, albeit beneficial. Have you ever seen anyone go running screaming because they can't stay silent for so long? Just curious. Well, maybe I'll let you comment on that.
Yes, they do sound difficult. And I think that, they sound difficult, and they can be. But over time, they can turn into a refuge. I actually now excitedly look forward to whenever I can go on retreat. So it changes. And I think I haven't personally seen anyone run into the woods, but people, I think, and my own experience, they can be quite torturous. There can be a lot of agony, but then the reminder is that nothing, as we know, is permanent. So there can be moments of intense agony and discomfort, and then moments, excuse me, of intense ecstasy, if you will, of just release or freedom or finding some relief from the agony. So it just, you see that, and you grow your ability to tolerate both the difficult and the not cling to the moments of bliss or whatever, if you're able to access that.
Well, what I found is that it helps you realize that it's just like in your ordinary life when you're going back and forth between like everything's great, everything's terrible. I mean, it's like, when I have my cup of coffee and I'm like, oh, this is wonderful, and then I finish the coffee and I'm like, the coffee's gone, this is terrible, and it just goes back and forth like that. On retreat, though, it's like you actually sort of see it happening because you have nothing else to distract you. So Zeenat, I am going to ask you kind of a personal question for me. So my partner is 6 months pregnant, and while she's completely healthy, like a lot of pregnant women at this stage in their pregnancy, she's experiencing some shortness of breath. So focusing on her breath while meditating is a bit challenging. I'm wondering if you have any advice with regard to that, or more generally, advice for pregnant women who are meditating in general.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I know this news, but I just want to say congratulations. It's just wonderful. Cannot wait to see you in the role of dad. I wanted to say that, breath can be challenging. So really sound is a great anchor or object of meditation or mindfulness. And then I would say specifically to somebody who is pregnant, sensations in the body can be a really cool thing to practice with, because there's so much going on, both the more pleasant or exciting sensations of the movement, but also aches and pains. So really, and using the aches and pains as a way to nurture and to care for, to attend to in the practice, rather than something to avoid or just drowning in the discomfort. And then alternating between the other more pleasanter sensations, because there's just so much going on physically in the body that can be turned into practice.
Yeah, this is the amazing thing about meditation, right? Is that even the sort of the bad things in life are useful. It's almost like if every time you got a flat tire, suddenly it made your car drive better. It'd be a wonderful thing, right? So, okay, as we're wrapping up here, I wanted to mention again that we're thinking of this morning session as the beginning of our second season. And as such, we think it's a great time to ask you at home for your feedback. So in a moment, I'm going to mention the ways that you can always get in touch with us. But then we're going to try something a little bit new. Zeenat and I are going to exit the space, but we're going to leave the chat box open until probably about 9:05-ish a.m. And if you have a moment, we'd love it if you would leave us a comment. Let us know what's working for you, how we might improve. We won't share any of these comments publicly. We'll only be reviewing them ourselves to see if there are ways that we can make these sessions a little bit better. But before we do that, bring up that guy there. Okay, so we'll be back with you every Tuesday and Friday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. You can find the links to these sessions and other resources at our main site at harvardpilgrim.org/mindfulness. Whether or not you stick around to leave us a comment this morning, never hesitate to drop us a line at askmtm@harvardpilgrim.org, or to leave us a comment on our Facebook page. Let us know what's on your mind. Let us know what questions you might have for our experts. You can also leave us a voicemail at my desk number, which is 617-509-7047. You can rewatch this session and older sessions on our YouTube page and find guided meditations on our SoundCloud page. So, Zeenat, thank you for your presence and your guidance this morning. I'm going to blinker you off, but thank you, and we'll hope to see you again soon. All right. Okay, folks, so I'm going to step away, and I'm going to actually bring up another little hold screen with some music as I do so. And feel free to stick around and leave us a comment. In the meantime, thanks to everyone for joining. Hope to see you again soon here, and have a wonderful day.